Welcome back to the channel. This week, we're going to be talking a little bit about postmodernism. But what is postmodernism? When I was first exposed to postmodernism, I took away the impression that it meant there's no such thing as truth, reality is subjective, and feelings are more important than facts. This is a wild but not too uncommon mischaracterization of postmodernism. But what I described there is actually something called moral relativism. Postmodernism has some overlap with relativism, but it's something else entirely. It's something I resisted at first, but the more I thought about postmodernism, the more I found it to be an essential diagnostic tool for the modern world. It's a lens that helps us explain why the stories we are told, whether they be about science, history, or politics, sometimes don't make any real sense when we look at them through a lens of logic. However, these very same issues often make perfect sense if you look at them through a lens of power. The French thinker Jean-François Lyotard described postmodernism as an incredulity towards meta narratives. Well, that's just a fancy way of saying that collectively we've lost faith in the huge, all encompassing stories that claim to explain everything objectively. You know the stories like men and women are biologically identical blank slates, or history is marching inevitably toward a perfect society, or we're always moving in a positive direction and nothing can stop progress. We can all feel these stories make us feel good, but they're kind of hollow. At least I feel them to be hollow. And that's kind of what started my adventure into looking at things with the postmodern lens. You see, the bigger the story is, the more factors it omits, and the more room there is for selective framing. Think World War II. We're the good guys, they're the bad guys. The narratives aren't necessarily false in their details, but they almost invariably serve certain interests and pretend to be neutral. That's their little trick. So, how did these stories get so much power? And how do they become what we accept as truth? This is where Michel Foucault comes in, about with his ideas about power and knowledge. Foucault argued that what counts as objective truth, quote unquote, especially with regards to science, is not discovered in a vacuum. You see, it is produced inside networks of power. Nothing happens in isolation. And that power, it doesn't just repress, it produces. That power decides whose voices get heard, it decides what questions can be asked, and it decides where the Overton window for popular discourse is allowed to sit. Foucault then gives us the mechanism for how Lyotard's meta narratives became so dominant. Here's a practical example that maybe you can get a sense of in your gut. Mainstream Keynesian economics. We can debate the merits of the models all day, but the postmodern lens invites you to ask a different questions. Whose interests does Keynesian economics actually serve? The postmodern answer is it serves the people who are holding the reins. The theory provides intellectual cover for their power. You see, it's not that Keynes has the best economic theory, he just has the theory that enables them to justify endless printing and spending. You can imagine why that is appealing to those who are in power and doing the spending. Now, we're not saying that Keynes was outright wrong in his theory. I'm saying that the game is rigged. The idea didn't win purely on merit, as we're taught. Ideas in practice win by both having merit and by a combination of having merit and by aligning with the interests of power. So when you combine Lyotard and Foucault, you get a powerful insight. We are surrounded by big stories that pretend to be neutral, but are manufactured by power structures to serve their specific interests. This is where postmodernism, if left unchecked, drives straight into a ditch. You see, it's the same ditch moral relativism drives into. If all truth is a power play and every narrative is a construct, then the tool itself becomes a weapon of endless deconstruction. It can lead you to a place where you believe nothing is real, nothing is true, and every hierarchy, from a company's org chart to a lobster's nervous system, is just an arbitrary act of oppression. And this is, in fact, how it's often strawmanned as a nihilistic dead end. You see, postmodernism is a philosophy that's brilliant, tearing things down, but it offers nothing to build with. and it sometimes mistakes the tyranny of human power structures for the tyranny of reality itself. This is precisely why, if you're going to use the postmodern lens, you need a corrective. We can't allow the analysis of everything and the subjectiveness that postmodernism invites to end in nihilism. We have to find a way to use the power of its diagnostic without getting lost in the abyss of moral relativism. This brings me to the synthesis that I have settled on. Postmodernism teaches us we can never truly be objective, that we're always part of the system and never just observers of it. That can sound depressing, but it's actually liberating. If you can admit your bias, you can address it. You can stop pretending you have the final answer and start asking better questions. Who benefits from this story I'm hearing? What gets left out? And most importantly, does my interpretation actually hold water in a meaningful way? Or am I playing mental mind games? So, this is a two-step process, a two-step filter. First, use the postmodern diagnostic to expose hidden power. Then filter those findings through what I call functional truth. Does this interpretation help me survive, thrive, and reduce unnecessary suffering? Does it hold water? I'm not interested in mental games. There's infinite amount of potential interpretations. There are only so many that are useful. So postmodernism, we see then, is not the enemy of reason. In fact, it's a valuable aid to it. It warns us against swallowing big stories uncritically, but it must be tempered by a pragmatism. We don't have to choose between naive faith and total relativism. We can stay skeptical of power, engage with the strengths of postmodernism, while we stay humble about our biases, while we keep a grounding in what actually works towards the end of human flourishing. That is the middle path. This framework helps me look at economics, media, and politics with fresher eyes. Now I want to hear from you guys. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Where have you seen a dominant story that appears to make more sense through the lens of power than through the lens of merit? Thanks for watching, as always. If you find this kind of synthesis useful, hit like and subscribe, and I'll keep digging into these practical philosophies. Take care. We'll talk again soon. Peace out.